What's up guys, got a brand new video for you today, and are you as sick of gimbal reviews as I am? Because there's too many of them. There's so many of them. But basically what I want to do is look at the Crane 3 compared beside the Weebill Lab, so you can make a decision on which one you'd rather get. Obviously one can handle more weight, so that's probably a huge deciding factor in what you get. Now I will compare these two gimbals side by side here, what they have and what they don't have, what features one has over the other. I will show some footage shot with the Crane 3 since this is heavily focused on the Crane 3. The Crane 3 can handle up to 10 pounds, so I have my C200 on here with the Sigma 18-35, both servo motors on here, so one for zooming and one for focusing. And then on the Weebill Lab, it can handle up to about 6.6 pounds, which I feel is still a little high for what it can actually do. And I have the A6400 on it right now with the 10-18 f4 and just the one servo motor on it because that's all it can handle. So both gimbals have that new locking mechanism on all the motors, so when you pack it up, you can lock it down and it's not gonna flop all around. So obviously both of these gimbals went through radically different designs. A design which I don't know if I'm super fan of yet, but it makes it really good for going into underslung mode or briefcase mode, whichever you want to call it. The Crane 3 is permanently always able to go into an underslung mode because of this rear handle here. All your controls are on it, so when you are in underslung mode, you'll be able to access everything. Versus the Weebill Lab, where you actually have to unscrew the tripod mount and screw it into the top here, and then you can go into underslung mode. They also have the option of those quick release quarter 20 plates that I showed off in my review. If you haven't checked that out yet, I'll put a link in the card above here and you can check that out. They actually both use the same ZY Play app where you can customize your controls and your settings. I made a video on that as well. I'll put a link above again. That was when I was using the Weebill Lab. It actually applies for the Crane 3 as well, being able to adjust your settings and get the smoothest settings out of your gimbal. Now inside the app, you can do stuff like motion time lapse and tracking and things like that. You can also change the settings on your camera if your camera supported and trigger recording. I'm not too sure if it works with the C200. I wasn't able to actually get it to work just because it's a cinema camera and doesn't really use the same options, but you could put something like a 5D Mark IV on here or the 1DX and do those settings. The Crane 3 actually has HDMI in, so you can come out of any camera's HDMI port and into the mini HDMI in the bottom of the cradle here. And then you can transmit your HDMI signal to your phone through the app. And apparently it's a 1080p signal. It does look pretty good. Versus the Weebill Lab, you can do similar option, but it's through USB and not every camera works. So with the Sony here, it does work and you can transfer your image through USB to wirelessly transfer it to your phone, and then you get a signal there. Now, when I was talking about the wireless image transfer on the Weebill Lab, I found that there was a bit of lag and latency. There is slightly less lag and latency on the Crane 3, but I do feel that you're not getting the full frame rate that the camera is actually putting out. So it does seem kind of stuttery or laggy, something that probably could be updated in firmware. Anyway, I'm done kind of talking about the two differences between these gimbals. Again, they both have tons of features. They're both awesome in their own class. Lighter weight cameras, heavier weight cameras. But I'm gonna show you what the footage looks like from the C200 on this gimbal, so let's check that out. All right, so I showed you the footage from this gimbal. I want to first talk about some of the things I noticed while using this camera setup on here. I find it extremely heavy and kind of awkward in this style of handle, and that's maybe something that I could learn to get better with. And you know, I just went into it expecting it to be like all the other gimbals, but I do find this kind of handle design kind of awkward for me on this much weight. And I think that if you're using this camera setup all day long, this would kind of really weigh on your left hand because your left hand is holding pretty much all the weight. Now that's me coming from a gimbal where I would use dual handles on something like this, something like the Ronin, and put you in the right position to handle that kind of weight. But again, maybe with practice and time, this setup would actually be not that bad. Now where I didn't find it that big of a deal for having this much weight is when you put it into underslung mode, because it actually bounces out really nicely. And so there is a give and take on this setup when you're running this much weight, and that's just something that I've noticed from my experience. Your lock and pan follow mode is up at the front here and not at the back with everything else. It would have been nice if those buttons were at the back with the follow, POV mode and stuff like that. Then everything's just in one spot. Versus like the Weebill Lab where they put the follow trigger right on the front. I kind of like that. Anyway, that's it. That kind of shows you the comparison between the two different gimbals. Again, Weebill Lab can only handle up to 6.6 pounds, where the Crane 3 can handle 10 pounds. The Crane 3 offers the option to have dual servo motor, so you can do zoom and focus on the front here, versus the Weebill Lab can only allow for one motor, which you can choose whether you want to put it on zoom or focus. Other than that, it's a solid gimbal. This thing can handle a ton of weight. The motors don't freak out or anything when I got this much weight on it. But yeah, drastically different gimbals. If you got a lot of weight, go for the Crane 3. If you got less weight, go with the Weebill Lab. Anyway guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. I'll see you guys in the next one.